Okay, so this is day 89 of being housed, or 89 housed. It is Wednesday, November the 12th, 2025. Goodness, if I seem tired, it's because I am a little tired. I just got back from a very vigorous workout at the gym. But anyway, so I want to get this response video done as soon as possible. Um, I happen to have I only have a half an hour remaining of rented time in this quiet space, and then I don't know if I'll have like any we're say free time where I'm in in the confines or in private confines where I can actually talk about this frankly without any distraction or actually talking about this where I'm currently living could pose a problem. So um, last night I got home. I'll get all the details out. So the Bible study ran a little later than normal. Um, so it ran to just shortly after 10. But then we also I don't have a key to the church. It was at the church, so I know how to arm the alarm, but I need somebody who's got a key to lock the church. Anyways, long story short, we had to call somebody with a key who has a key, sorry, to lock it. I got back to where I'm currently staying around 10:30, and then the owner, his door was open in his room, and he heard me come up the stairs, and he politely invited me in to talk about um, the message that I sent him via Facebook earlier that day regarding the being accosted and verbally threatened twice by his mother, and I also included that I don't feel safe there. Just gonna try and get the details out as quickly as possible. I want to get them out in their accurate order, the order that they came out. Um, and I want to also note that I'm very appreciative of the owner. He normally can talk and talk and talk and talk, and oftentimes we don't really get to the point of the conversation. I found he was more direct and concise, and this conversation it lasted. We're say 40. I was in bed by 11:30, so it could have been the better part of an hour. So he said that I sat on the couch in his room, and he just mentioned that he talked with his mother when she returned from work, and he said that he's really uncertain. So this is me paraphrasing, by the way, too. So I'm just going off my memory from last night. So this is virtually 13 hours later, but he says that's true because it's another he said, she said. And but he said, but what I want to assure you is my mother is all bark and no bite. And then he started explaining, like he prefaced his explanation by saying this is not a justification by any stretch of the manner. But then he started explaining, a prior roommate that used to live there, and a circumstance that happened with like a really friendly dog and another cat, and the dog was chasing the other cat, and then the cat hurt itself, and the cat didn't recover from that injury. And he said, so my mother's really afraid that her cats could be hurt, and she's very protective of me and her cats. And so when I talked with her, he's like, she just basically said to me, I want to know that if he, meaning me, hurts one of my cats, he's going to pay the the veterinary bill. And he's like, so that's all her concern. She's not mad at you. And he's like, it's like she's just concerned about the welfare of her cat, and that's all that was. She was just bringing that to your attention. And then he said, "This is not a justification for her actions as well, but she's awkward, and she often thinks like she doesn't want to come across confrontational, and he said like her words. And this is once again a paraphrase, but something to the effect of her words were, she doesn't think that I'm taking her seriously. So she asked if I'd turned the light on the night before, and he's like, she's convinced that you didn't turn the light on, and so she felt disrespected, and because she felt disrespected, like that, she takes that to heart. I says, okay. And then I just said to him, so this is the first time I spoke. I didn't really say much. I just listened. And this is usually typically how I handle these situations. I just listen. then I kind of chew on and process what's being said. But I said to him, I said, well, like she threatened me twice, and like that's pretty severe. And it's like this is now patternized behavior. It's been brought to your attention multiple times. It's been going on um, since I first moved in, and it started with her accosting me and stepping in front of me, and then getting very aggressive with me to her, like slander or like calling me a thief and like being very aggressive to my face. And now it's escalated to her making threats. This is getting worse and worse and worse. And this is like this. I do not feel safe here. This is not something that should be tolerated. So then he said, okay. Well, he's like, my mother is more bark than bite. And then he gave an example of like a video that's rather popular on YouTube or on the internet with two dogs, and they're separated by a fence, and they're both on each side of the fence, and they're growling with each other. And then he's like, then somebody opens up the gate. Pardon me. He's like, and then both dogs just stare at each other. He's like, so it's like they're just trying to intimidate each other. And he's like, I'm certain. He's like, you're a pretty big guy, and he's like, certain if you kind of flex back at her in any sort of manner, she would shrink back right away because she wouldn't be able to dominate you. And then I paused that right away, and I said, "Well, I would never do that. Like I'll have nothing to do with arguments and nothing to do with aggression. Like to aggress somebody who's aggressing me, it's not in my heart, and I have no desire to have anything to do with aggression." And he's like, no, and that's what I respect about you. And he's like, and this is why, like I really want you here. And he's like, I'm sorry that my mother handles things this way. And so then he started talking about mens res. And so he was saying, like, I'm not sure if you're familiar, like in the court of law, like you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, like mens res. Because I mentioned like the threat is like needs to be taken very seriously. And he's like with mens res, and the example he gave. So this one I can't say verbatim. He was sitting on the couch across from me, and he said, if I utter a threat towards you, and he's like, but it's empty. So if I say, even if I said I'm gonna, like physically harm you to its extreme, he's like, but I'm just sitting here. He's like, it's that's not a chargeable offense. He's like, because you have to have the mens res. You have to show like it's not just the words, but the ability to bring those words to fruition via actions. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, I think he's talking about the actus reus, like the actual action, and then correlating that with the intent. But regardless, I just listened. And then he said, but now he's like that would be like my mother. She's barking, she's making threats, but they're harmless. She wouldn't be able to back them up. She's not like that. And then he said, but now what if I made a threat or said the same words and I made a threat, and then he's like, and I have a knife in my hand, and I get up out of my chair, and I start, like, I corner you, and I start closing the distance on you. He's like, well, that proves the mens res. He's like, I have the intent. Just saying that, I was thinking that's not true. I'll talk about that in another video, but I just listened, and he said, so he's like, she's harmless. And then again, I said, well, making threats to somebody is not harmless, like at all. Like that, actually, the opposite of harmless. And this is escalating and it's escalating rather quickly. And so, anyways, so then he ended up talking about his long-term plans, and he was saying how he normally doesn't include other people because, like, he's encountered a lot of failure in his past. And my heart really went out to him. And I really understood what he was saying. He was saying, like right now, he's like, with the added income from you being here, he's like, there's certain things that, I'll be able to do financially that could really help me in the future. And he's saying, and that kind of brightens my day, and that kind of gives me something to look forward to and something to build towards. But then he was talking about his mother and saying how like he feels like this might be like her sabotaging those plans, and he kind of went into a lot of detail about different things that have happened in his childhood with his mother, and different things that have occurred that have greatly impacted his um, different things that he's been trying to do. And he was saying, I feel like this could be the same thing. And he's like, and I'm worried. He's like I'm going to move forward with what I'm doing. And he shared those plans with me, and I thought that was quite nice of him. Um, but he's like, if you move out because of this, then he's like, there's still the like now there's like that lapse of finances. So he's like, I'm gonna have to find somebody else to rent the room for the same amount, And he's like, in all honesty, you've been a great, like the ideal roommate. And he said, like, you're really quiet, you keep to yourself. And he's like, you're seldom here. He's like, you're up early and then you're gone. And then you're gone throughout the day. And then you come back and he's like, the only time you ever come out of your room is to use the bathroom. And he's like, so I don't know about you, but I think this is a really good setup. And he's like, I really hope you feel comfortable here. And I said, no, but I don't feel safe. I was talking about that. And so there's a lot of things I will talk about, like my thoughts on these, in another video. Um, but then at the end of it, he shared some stories. And the one story he shared, so he talked about his mother and his mother's uncontrollable temper, and how she's very methodic in the way that she fights, and she's very methodic in the way that she wants vengeance on somebody. She's very methodic. So he went into that conversation, and then he talked about a young man that we both know, and he was talking about something that occurred when he was a child. So this is long, many years ago, and how he remembers his mother grabbed hold of the young kid and sunk her nails in his shoulders. So they must have been very young, and how that young kid brought up to him in high school the scars in his shoulder, and he said, "Do you remember that your mother did that?" And he's like, "What I learned though," he's like, "people often," he's like, that kid was tormenting me, and my mother was trying to defend me." And he's like, but in his recollection, like the young kid that's got the scars now, he was innocent, and all he remembers is the attack that came on him. And he's like, I noticed sometimes people do that. They don't see their actions that instigate something. They only see the response. So I wasn't really sure where he's going with that. I find he just talks in tangents quite a bit, and so I don't always know if the things are correlated or if he actually means something deeper. I find him to be more indirect. But anyhow, so he talked about that, and then he talked about his mother getting angry with him in the past, and they had an altercation, and then she took a vacuum, like so it sounded like one of those like smaller vacuums that you use for like doormats, and he said she hit him with it and she hurt his rib. And he's like, the next time she got physically aggressive with me, he said, I pinned her on the ground and she hasn't been physically aggressive with me again. Well, as he's saying this, I was thinking, but you just contradicted your contradicted your initial statement that your mother is harmless by telling me that she is extremely like vicious and physically aggressive, and will even resort to aggravated assault with a weapon. And so I just listened again, and I was rather perplexed. And then at the end, he concluded, and he said, "So I hope this helps." He's like, "I'm sorry you went through that." And he's like, "In all honesty, he's like, I read what you wrote when I talked to my mother." He's like, "Both your stories were pretty much pretty spot on." He's like, "There was very little variance between the two of them." And then I asked him, I said, "Well, what was the variance?" And he was like, "Well, I think just like your interpretation." He's like, "My mother was just saying like that you might have misinterpreted like what she was saying as aggressive when she was actually just saying it out of concern." And then again, I reiterated and I said firmly and plainly, I said, "She threatened me twice. Um, you don't speak to somebody in concern and use threats. Like a threat is very specific, and and you can't just threaten somebody in a very like a threat is always rooted in aggression and intent." So then he said, "Well, I wish I could have been there. If I was there, then I'd be able to see things on the spot." And he's like, "Then I could make an assessment of what's taking place." And he's like, "But because I wasn't there, it just puts me in a really bad predicament." And he's like, "So all I can suggest to you is, if this occurs again, assess the situation. If it seems like my mother's hostile, disengage with her." And he said, "I assure you, she's not the type of person that would chase you down or will attack you." So he said that, and he's like, "And then just like do what you need to do, and then like come and get me, so then I can deal with it right away." So and he said, but otherwise, he's like, if I was there and I seen her, so he's like, hypothetically, if I was there and I seen her, like yell at you or threaten you, then when I'm talking with her, he's like, I won't tolerate bullying in my house. He's like, I want everybody to be safe, and this is my responsibility to ensure everybody in here is safe. So he's like, if you're being vicious to her, then I'm going to, address you. If she's being vicious to you, I'm going to address her. But I'd have to see it in order to assess it. So I just okay. Thank you. I appreciate you looking into this, and I appreciate you. Like I'm sorry that you're in the middle of this, and yeah, I'll heed to that advice, and yeah, and then I just went to my room, and I was really tired. I was very exhausted. So anyway, so that's the gist of that. I think somebody's waiting to use this quiet room that I'm currently using, so I'm going to have to leave here, um, and I'm going to be working on the Planes and People Watching manuscript. But if I'm able to get back in here, I will do some more of these videos. I'll do more of these videos when I have not just a quiet space, but a space where naturally I'm not going to want to do these in the room where I'm currently staying because the owner would be able to hear them. His room is directly beside mine, so I think that would be rude. And but I think these are pertinent, and it's important to get these out, especially while the information is fresh. But I'll just have to wait for reasonable accommodations, and we'll go from there. But anyway, so that's a recap of that, and I'm glad to be able to share it, and I'll keep you posted.